Good afternoon. I would like to start saying thanks to the committee for inviting me to share the experience we are having with health in Europe. Active Hip is an educational and training program for patients with a hip fracture and their family caregivers. Here you can see the partners we are performing the project. We are for public healthcare system from three different countries. From Spain, we are the Andalusian public healthcare system and the primary care centers in Catalonia. From Belgium, it's the hospital of Leuven. And from Portugal, we have the Centre Hospitalar of Lisbon, of north of Lisbon. In addition, so we are three universities: University of Barcelona, University of Leuven, and University of Lisbon, and one company that is Amgen from Germany. The main aim of the Active Hip is to improve the functional recovery of the patients with a hip fracture and the quality of life. But in addition, we also want to reduce the caregiver burden and we want to give them an active role during the recovery process of the patients. Here you can see the evolution of the project. We start with a very small local project in Granada, in southern Spain. And after that, we expand the project to other regions, but in fact, we changed the contents of the project also. That previous Active Hip, it was mainly a theory rehab program, and we start with that because the situation that we had at the hospital, it was that most of our patients had family caregivers with them, and they demand us more information about how to manage the patients and how to do when they come back home, because the hospital stay is less than 1 week. So they really need to teach new skills and more knowledge about how to manage the new situations. And we start with some workshops at the hospital before the pandemic. But we realized that they also wanted to have more information that they could review on demand. So that was the reason why we started with the website in the previous Active Hip. The results of the project were quite positive, and I'll tell you later in this presentation. So we were very motivated to continue with the project and to improve the program with the comments and suggestions of the patients and caregivers. So for that reason, we applied for funding in Europe. During the last year, we were creating the current Active Hip, and we were testing the pilot version at the end of the year in some hospital in Andalusia and in Lisbon. And during the present year, we are testing the final version of the current Active Hip in the same regions in Andalusia and Lisbon, but also in new regions in the north of the country, in Catalonia, and in Leuven, in Belgium. So the new contents of the Active Hip are not only the exercises, so we include health education. So during the last year, we started creating the contents involving all the main stakeholders. So we had a focus group with patients with hip fracture, with caregivers of patients with hip fracture, and we had caregivers of patients who were independently at that time, but also with the caregivers of patients who were not independent, because we wanted to provide the information to the caregivers also for those who really needed to work more with the patients or to help more to the patients. So the last focus groups were with the health professionals. With the information of the focus group, we create 7 models, 5 for patients and caregivers, and 2 specific for caregivers. We record all the videos. So we learned how they wanted to have the information. So we create the videos and also to print the guidelines, because many patients told us that they also wanted to have something that they could check not only through the app. And we designed and we create the app for patients and caregivers and the website for health professionals, because the health professionals can follow up the evolution of the patients through a website, and they can change the treatment and the recommendations for the patients. So in this figure you can see the main contents of the program. So we can say that we have two main arms. One is the educational content that are provided through the Moodle platform, but for patients it's just through the app, and they can watch videos with information about how is the recovery process, and with advices to perform activities of daily living at home, and two specific modules for caregivers. And the other arms is the rehabilitation program that lasts 12 weeks, and the patients have the options to perform 2 sessions of physical activity and 1 session of occupational therapy. And in addition of the 2 main arms, we also create other contents that patients and caregivers can watch on demand, and they are about recommendations for home and how to manage their daily life. The educational contents were focused to change false beliefs about the hip fracture, like for example the time that patients have to wait until they can start walking or performing activities of daily living. The second model was more focused on the experience during the hospital stay, so to teach them how they have to start with mobilizations, with the exercises, how to manage pain, how to take medications, how to prepare the hospital discharge. The third model was more focused on how to manage the new situation at home and what the devices to use to perform activities of daily living, how they have to manage the new situations. The fourth model was focused on the well-being, on mental well-being, and try to encourage them to try to recover their leisure activities and their routines before they had the fracture. And the 5 models were more focused to prevent falls and secondary fractures. For the caregivers, we were also worried about the health of the caregivers, because we know that sometimes they lose their self, and we encourage them to take care of themselves, and we teach them how to manage the patients to avoid the back pain of the caregivers, how they also have to keep doing what they did before the situations, in the way that they can do. The rehabilitation program offers the 2 sessions of physical exercise and 1 of occupational therapy. And but for those patients that are really motivated, they can also have an extra session during the week. The sessions last between 30 and 60 minutes. The physical exercise sessions are structured in 4 different levels, so not all the patients perform all the same sessions. It depends on the functional level that we assess with the time up and go test and the short physical performance battery and functional independence measure. It depends on the score. The health professionals decide the level of the sessions, but the health professionals also change the difficulty of the sessions depending on the evolution of the functional level of the patient. And we create 16 weeks of treatment, but each patient perform 12 weeks. We create more because we know that not all the patients have the same recovery, so that was the reason. And in order to give more resources to the health professionals. And for the occupational therapy sessions, they had more task-oriented activities, and at the end of each session they also have some music and dance to try to integrate all during the session. And we train them about proprioception and balance, but all of them integrated in the task-oriented activities. these are the other part that I told you before about the advices of health professionals about how to manage the situation when they are at home, and how to perform activities of daily living. And these videos about how to do different activities are divided, so they are different for patients who had the hip replacement, or for those who had a knee arthroplasty, or for those who had other kind of surgeries. So because in that way we try to personalize the treatments depending of the type of surgery that the patients had. And finally, some more recommendations about nutrition and about the physical activity, because we also want to change to give them healthy habits after the fracture. The user profiles are different. One is for health professionals. As I told you before, they can follow the patients and they can change the treatment, not only the exercise program. They can also change the medications, and they can check if the patients are having adherence or not. And for patients and caregivers, they have the app where they can see all the educational contents, all the resources on demand, and the rehabilitation sessions. And after each rehabilitation session, the patients have to answer 3 questions. One is about pain, the second one is about effort, and the third one is about the satisfaction with the session. And if one patient scores 5 points or more about pain, a warning message appears in the website of the health professionals to call the patients and to ask about what happened during the session, maybe to change the treatment also. And the option of this tool is that the communications between patients and caregivers is improved, and they have the option to send messages between them, and also to plan video conferences to see how the patients are performing the activities at home. And in that way you can change and you can see how is the real environment of the patients even when you are at the hospital. Now I show you some of the results that we had from the previous study, the pilot version of the active hip, and we found that the patients had a good functional recovery. It was statistically significant for the functional independence measure and the time up and go test, but we have to take care about the results because we didn't find an improvement, a better improvement than patients who had the usual home care treatment that in our case is just a few sessions of home rehabilitation. So that was one of the main reasons why we create Active Hip, because the home rehabilitation that we provide in our country is not the best. So we thought that delivery would be better than nothing. But now, for example, in Belgium, we are testing the new Active Hip with as a complement of the home rehabilitation, because the patients there have more home rehabilitation, but the physiotherapist thought that it would be good also to provide the program for those days where the patients don't have home-based in-person rehabilitation. So we will see how the results are testing the program in different healthcare systems during this year. So I told you that our patients improve the functional level, but also the quality of life and their physical condition, and they also reduce the anxiety and depressions. So we were happy with the program, and the caregivers also, and some of them they share some emotion, and they told us very very important experiences, and the level of satisfaction was 9/10, and they encourage us to continue with the program and to improve the program, like for example with a more personalized follow-up and a close follow-up, and more variety of the resources. So we use their suggestion to create the new contents together with the focus group that I told you. Regarding the barriers, we found that a lot of patients had a low health literacy, and they did not have too much skills to use internet, but some of them, they were not really motivated to use internet, but we had the caregivers, and some of them, they use it and they teach the patients how to do. And of course, we cannot say that telerehabilitation is for all, but we can say that for some patients it works. And maybe that is what we have to know, no? That we have to offer different options to different people. And in that sense, well, the health policy has to change also. And now with the pandemic, the situation changed, because when we started with the previous Active HIP, we found more resilience of the health professionals. But now everybody asks for some kind of tools, because we have to do the follow-up of the patients, and sometimes we cannot go where the patients are. So let's see what happens in the future. And now, to end my presentation, I show you a video summarizing the project that we are conducting in the 3 countries.
Active HIP Plus has a mobile application for patients and caregivers where they can find all the necessary resources for their rehabilitation program. In an easy and intuitive way, participants have access to the physical exercise and occupational therapy videos scheduled per week, with a questionnaire at the end of each of them for follow-up by the healthcare professionals. Direct access to the online educational program with specific modules for patients and caregivers. Patients and caregivers also have at their disposal a series of extra resources to complement and expand their knowledge from the scheduled rehabilitation sessions. Healthcare professionals have a web page to monitor and follow up the activity of patients and caregivers with respect to the rehabilitation program, educational program, and medication. The platform also offers a bi-directional communication channel through messaging and video conference. Active HIP Plus has been designed for hip fracture patients, but the current situation has shown that it can also be used for frail elderly people.
That was all. Now I'll be happy to answer all your questions. Thank you very much.